That's all there is. That's all the music. So welcome back to Memory Lane. And today, this week, our destination is probably two of the most classic games ever. And that is Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. Yeah, we're gonna do a double header with this one. Now, what I mean by the most famous, I mean I don't think there's a single generation, a single person that is not familiar with Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, okay? We all know those two, okay? The little yellow circle with a mouth that eats the white dots being chased by ghosts, ghosts of different colors. And then you eat the power pellet, which is the big white dot. And then the ghost turn blue, and then you can eat the ghost. And if you eat all the white dots, then you beat the level, you move on to the next one. I mean, it's we all know those games. They've been ported everywhere, from arcades to home consoles, plug and plays, cell phone games, computer games. Like you can't escape Pac-Man. I have Pac-Man on my Nintendo Switch. For God's sakes, like it's still today. It's still here today, and being bought and accruing money. It's you just can't go on with gaming without some of the classics that kind of help bring gaming to the foreground, and Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man were definitely the two to do it. Now, as usual, I'm gonna start off with the facts before I go into my memories about it. So we're gonna go in with Pac-Man since it came out first in 1980. It was developed and published by Namco, which later became Bandai Namco, however you say it. And it was originally called Puck-Man back in Japan. And it was released in Japan in May of 1980, and then a few months later, in August of 1980, we in North America got it over here. It was designed by Toru Iwatani, who led a nine-man team. Toru wanted to create a game that appealed to both men and women of all ages, and the design of Pac-Man was inspired by pizza. That's not a joke. That was the facts I found. Pac-Man was inspired by pizza because it's round. You take a piece out, now it looks like Pac-Man with his mouth open. Now the whole reason the name changed to Pac-Man is because when it came out as Puck-Man, Puckman, well, there was a fear of people defacing the name Puck-Man by scratching out that hump in the P and turning it to an F, and now the name is called Fuckman. So they changed it to Pac-Man, which is a fact you learn in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Shout out to Michael Cera. Regarded as one of the most influential and greatest games of all time, and all the success from Pac-Man led to several sequels, extensive merchandise, two TV series, and a hit single called Pac-Man Fever by Buckner and Garcia. And then with the success also became the mascot. Pac-Man became the official mascot for Bandai Namco and remains one of the highest grossing games in history of gaming, uh, which has reached more than $14 billion in revenue with almost 50 million units in combined sales. And that was like 10 years ago. I couldn't find too much of the recent stuff now that seemed trustworthy in numbers. But like it's got to be definitely more than that, maybe. Uh, but it's Pac-Man. Like it just made that much money, and the extensive what you call the extensive sequels or merchandise. Okay, sure, extensive merchandise. I'm reading my notes backwards. Sure, I mean Pac-Man was ever it toys, shirts, all clothing, bed sets, you know, uh plushies, like stuffed animals. It's like I said, clothing. But Pac-Man was everywhere. It still is. I can go and get a Pac-Man T-shirt, some Pac-Man socks, with a Pac-Man blanket, drink out of my Pac-Man cup, and play with a Pac-Man plushie that I got from my dog. You know, and then several sequels. I mean, there are like I have it on the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo Switch, and the PS4. Pac-Man Museums, Pac-Man Collections. I even have a Pac-Man plug and play that has all the same games. Like you have Pac-Man 2 or something like that, Pac-Man World, Pac-Man 2 Adventure, Pac-Man Championship. Like it's just there's so many different iterations of this one game that started off at what seemed like a very simple idea of this little yellow circle goes on eating white circles. It became a juggernaut in the gaming history. You cannot listen to this and tell me you don't know what Pac-Man is. If you are, you're fucking stupid. But uh, I that's it. That's all I can say. I can't really defend you any other way other than you just been sheltered forever. But we all know Pac-Man. And then speaking of arcade classics, apparently Galaxian, which is another arcade classic, was being developed the same time Pac-Man was. It's just Pac-Man came out first. It just got finished and released first. But Galaxian was in production at the same time by the same companies. And according to Toru, the guy who created Pac-Man, ghosts were chosen as the enemies because at the time they were often seen as villains in animation. So a lot of animation, anime, cartoons, whatever, back in the day, ghosts were probably the number one villain to use. So that's why he chose them as the enemies in the Pac-Man games. And originally, the Pac-Man ghosts were all supposed to be the same color, just one color. Till somebody on the team said, you know what, let's make them multicolored just to, have some distinction between them. And everyone was like, okay. It was a unanimous decision after the idea. And they were like, sure, let's uh let's do that. And so that's why we have multicolored ghosts, because someone brought up the idea. Otherwise they all would have been the same color. I think red was the color they're going to choose for every single one. But now you have red, blue, yellow, and pink. I don't think there ever was a green one. I think it's red, blue, yellow, and pink. I think it was Inky, Blinky, Dinky, and Clyde for the Pac-Man Ghost. I don't remember. I don't think they have the same names in Miss Pac-Man. I'm not 1,000% sure. Should have researched that, but you know, I'm just a dude in a mic. I ain't no professional. And back in 1982, there was which was just 2 years after the game was released, about 400,000 units were sold, and about $6 billion in revenue. I double checked the research, and the same numbers popped up. $6 billion in revenue, and it was an arcade machine. So I did the math, some research here, and supposedly $6 billion equals 24 billion quarters. Okay, that is a lot of coins. That's a lot of quarters. A lot of people put money into Pac-Man at the arcade or whatever. There was an arcade cabinet of Pac-Man. 24 billion quarters. That is that's insane. That's suppose that equals $6 billion. That'll fill up your house. All them quarters. 24 billion quarters. How would how would first of all, I just want to know how they kept track of that shit back then, It's not like there was any internet in the 80s or anything like that. Like how was everything kept track of that? I don't know. I was born in the 90s, so I wasn't around for all this. And speaking of the $24 billion or 24 billion quarters, that that is more with the research I did. Apparently, that's more than movie theaters and Las Vegas casinos combined with when it comes to coin operated machines. Like that's insane. You know how many casinos are in Vegas? You know how many people are in those from day in and day out? Same thing with movie theaters. Especially back then, movie theaters had arcades. They still do, you know. Like not they don't I don't think movie theaters take quarters anymore. I remember when they switched from quarters to tokens, and then now you have a game card that's like a credit card. You just load it with money, and then you swipe the games like you swipe a credit card and to play the games. I think that's how movie theaters do it now. I don't know if it's all of them that does it. I know Marcus Theaters does it that way, but I can't speak for. all of them. Also in 1982 was the release of Miss Pac-Man. Now, Miss Pac-Man had a different developer. It was developed by General Computer Corporation, or GCC for short. It was published by Midway, and GCC, General Computer, had made the game as a mod kit. It was originally a mod kit, a modification kit for the original Pac-Man, and it was originally titled Crazy Otto. Crazy Otto, OTTO, Crazy Otto. And supposedly the project was brought to Atari, but due to the legal actions with Atari and with Pac-Man, GCC was forced to present the project to Midway, and apparently they liked it. Listed as one of the most successful American arcade games ever, and the success inspired, again, extensive merchandise, several ports to consoles, which, I mean, I have several ports of Miss Pac-Man myself. I'm looking at my copy for the Sega Genesis right now. And, a TV cartoon. And for a while, there was consistent legal ownership issues that brewed between Namco and GCC, mostly because of the Pac-Man name and, of course, the very close resemblance of the Pac-Man game. Okay, again, a little yellow circle that eats the white dots being chased by multicolored ghosts. The only difference is Miss Pac-Man has a bow on her head, and I can never tell if it's an eye or like a little mole on her face, but I think it's an eye. But yeah. So back in 1981, GCC gave the rights to Midway in exchange for royalty payments, and between the two companies, Namco and GCC, and all that, there was a settlement that was reached back in 1983. So they just cut their losses and got the royalties, and they just moved on with Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man being two separate games. Now, that is the facts I can give you. Now let's talk about my memories with Pac-Man. Now, Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man is the better game. Okay, it runs smoother, runs faster. Okay, so Miss Pac-Man moves faster than Pac-Man does, which means the ghosts move faster. So there's a bit of a challenge. Okay, it's a little bit more vibrant, a lot more colors in Miss Pac-Man. Just a lot of aesthetically pleasing to look at. You know, and just a little bit more music. Not much more music, but just like the intro music is a little bit longer. But Pac-Man, the OG, I have Pac-Man on plug and play. So I have like 2, 3 different plug and plays with Pac-Man. I can go on the computer right now, go to Google, type in Pac-Man, and just play it right there on a browser on a website. I have you can get a Pac-Man arcade one up and play Pac-Man and all the other games that came out with the same developer as Pac-Man. I have Pac-Man on the PlayStation 4, like I said. I have Pac-Man on the Nintendo Switch, like I said. I have Pac-Man on the PS1, the PS2. I don't have it on the PS3 yet, and I don't have it on the PS5 because I just got one. But it's like it. Pac-Man is a name that we all know. We don't even have to explain what it is. We know Pac-Man. Just say, "Hey, Pac-Man." Okay, little yellow circle. The ghosts, the white dots. Hey, I remember the cherries in the middle, or the strawberry, or a pretzel. There was always that special food item in the center that gave you a little extra points if you ate it. I remember. I think the furthest I ever got in Pac-Man was like level 10. I should have looked up how many levels there were, but I think there was like 8 or 10 levels that I got as a kid. That was the furthest I ever got, and I never got there again because it's just as a kid, it's not like where I am now. I have a collection of games. It's back then I had a collection of games too, but it was like, okay, well, it's either I got them for Christmas, got them for my birthday, or if I was lucky, I got them on a good deal. Like, oh, $4, sure, why not? But at the same time, it's like I was not a kid getting a brand new games. I wasn't getting no damn $60, $70 video game back then. You know, like for $60, $70, even back then, I could get a stack of games. That seemed more pleasing to me because to have options. You know, but it was cool because I remember. I think my dad, my mom, my grandmother, they all had school flip phones. The old singular, the Sprint flip phones, and they come with games like Snake, and Pac-Man was one of them. Miss Pac-Man was one of them. It depended, but like those are the two games I played a lot. 'Cause, I was like fucking 6 years old. What I'm gonna do with a cell phone? Oh, there's games on the phone. Oh, it's Pac-Man. Oh, I know how to play this. You use the arrow buttons. It's simple, you know. But as I was saying, like, as an adult, we don't have that time anymore and we have other things we got to do. I got to work. I got to do this podcast. I got a YouTube to worry about, and, I'm an artist. I have an art career to I'm in and out with now. It's, it's not like I can just sit here. I don't get spring break or summer breaks anymore. It's not like I can wake up at the crack of dawn and then stay up till the crack of dawn the next morning. No, like I hate waking up. I hate going to bed, but I have to because I'm fucking tired. I can't sit and play games like I normally do. Some games I'm good at, but the only games I'm good at are the games I grew up playing. If I play a new game now, I'm fucking sucking ass on it. You know, Pac-Man again. Like sure I got as far as a kid, but I'll be lucky to make it to level 3 because like there is a bit of a strategy when you're playing these games, and you kind of learn that as you play it more often. But I can't just sit and play games as long as I used to. It's like I'll get lost for maybe a half hour max and then be like, okay, I got to move on to something else. I can't be alone with that one there. I can't be alone with that. Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man. And, I have more Pac-Man games here than I do Miss Pac-Man, but I'm not going to deny that Miss Pac-Man was the better game. It was just too smooth and too pure. It did, it did everything that Pac-Man did, but better. Like I said, it ran faster, it ran smoother. It was a little bit tougher because everything else was moving fast. Like I remember the introduction to Miss Pac-Man, not the game, but just like the character. I believe once you beat like what is it, level 3? After level 3 or level 4 or something like that, you have that cutscene or well, actually no, I remember the first cutscene in the first Pac-Man. It's either after the first or second level. He's being chased by ghosts, and then now the ghosts being chased by him. And then I think it's after level 4, level 5, somewhere along those lines. You'll see Pac-Man running one direction, Miss Pac-Man running another direction, and then they meet each other in the middle of the screen. And I believe there's like a heart that is in the middle of the two. So like I remember the introduction to Miss Pac-Man, but it's like I don't know, was it always there? People people from the 80s, let me know if that Miss Pac-Man scene was always there, or did they add it in the other ports because Miss Pac-Man now exists? Like back in 1980 and 1981, did was there a Miss Pac-Man cutscene in the original Pac-Man? Like, or did that not exist? Because Miss Pac-Man didn't come out till 1982 from a whole completely different group of people. I don't know. You have to let me know about that one. You'll have to let me know about that. But I tell you what, Pac-Man is still getting more clout than Miss Pac-Man does. Like I said, there's Pac-Man World, so it's a 3D Pac-Man. It's on the PS1, 2, 3, the PSP, Game Boy. It's like there's not very many Miss Pac-Man games. Sometimes Miss Pac-Man will get in on compilations with Pac-Man. But I will say it is cool that Arcade One Up did give Miss Pac-Man her own arcade cabinet. So it's up to and they had the same list of games on them. Sorry, the list of games on them. But the only difference between Pac-Man and the Miss Pac-Man Arcade One Up is well, one's Pac-Man, one's Miss Pac-Man. That's it. The rest are the same game as Galaga, Galaxian, Mappy. You know, it's just your preference. In fact, I do have one Arcade One Up cabinet. It's a Mortal Kombat one, so it's a lot of fighting games on there. A lot of games by Midway. Although Miss Pac-Man wasn't on Midway though. It's its own thing because it was I believe it was oh, yeah, I gotta check my notes again. Oh Jesus. Well, I wonder if they put the two together now because I couldn't find any research on that about them putting the two together since they'd started with two different companies, but one's with Midway, one's with Namco. But now I think they're both with Namco. As I'll see them on like the Namco museums and arcade classic hits, but I won't see them on Midway shit. So yeah, so I think Miss Pac-Man's now with Pac-Man. So the next arcade one-up cabinet I'll get will be a Miss Pac-Man one. I do prefer Miss Pac-Man over regular Pac-Man, even though I played original Pac-Man more. But like I said, Miss Pac-Man is just too smooth. It's too smooth. Like who else can agree with me that Miss Pac-Man runs a lot smoother than Pac-Man does? Like you'll play Miss Pac-Man for a while, then you play the regular Pac-Man, and then you'll see the difference. As like the regular Pac-Man is not as colorful, it's not as vibrant. It's just the blue outlines with the white dots, and it moves slower. Like I said, Miss Pac-Man did everything Pac-Man did, but better. Okay, it's Pac-Man on steroids to an extent, but it's that's still my analogy of it. In the arcade, if you remember the arcade episode I did last week, I talked about arcade cabinets. I remember playing them on the actual arcade cabinets back when whatever arcades was still around when I was a kid. Uh, and I remember my mom bringing up the Atari 2600 as she had when she was a kid, and there was some classics on there like Dig Dug and Frogger, and Pac-Man was one of them. And I was playing Pac-Man on my TV. Like I recognized the games pretty easily because I remember the arcades, and Pac-Man stuck out pretty easily because that's just a very simple game. It's a very easy one to remember, hard to forget, easy to remember. Because Pac-Man, we all know Pac-Man. We all can remember that box art. We all can remember what it looked like on the side of the cabinets. We all know what the game looks like on the screen. Same thing with Miss Pac-Man. We all know the same shit. What the art looks like, what she looks like, what the game itself looks like, how the game is played. You just need a direction pad of any sort. So like arrow keys or a D-pad on a controller or a joystick on an arcade cabinet. Like you don't need buttons. You don't need anything else. Just go. Move around. Figure out the strategy. Eat all the dots, avoid the ghosts, don't lose all your lives. I think you start off with 3 lives. The more points you accumulate, the more lives you get, you know, and just move on until I don't remember if there's an actual ending. There has to be. I don't think it's a forever game unless it just restarts you at level 1, but harder. A lot of arcade games are known for that. You beat the game and you start back at level 1, and now the game's harder than it was the first round. Like Contra did that, and I want to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I might be wrong on that, but I don't know. I didn't find anything on that either. But it's two classic games that we can't we just can't forget about when it comes to history of gaming. Like the impact that they had on entertainment in general, not just gaming, but just entertainment. Like I said, the merchandise, the sequels, and it was on TV. They both had TV shows. Hell, the movie Pixels that came out like a decade ago or somewhere around that time, the Adam Sandler movie Pixels was dedicated to gaming. One of the bosses in that movie was Pac-Man. They were playing as the ghost in those little cars that they had, being chased by Pac-Man. Like we all know Pac-Man. Still to this day, that this little yellow circle that was inspired by pizza was is still like a cult classic today. Like we all know Pac-Man, we all know Miss Pac-Man. I've said it over and over again. I can't say it stress out any much, you know. And there's only so much I can stretch out with this. I mean, it's a very simple game. It's a very simple concept. We know it. Not a ton of meat on the bone when it comes to gaming and its history, but uh, the history. Well, I can argue there's a little bit of meat on the bone with the history, but if you were there from the beginning since 1980 and up to today with Pac-Man, sure. But, I can only speak on my memory as in like I remember when Pac-Man went from the arcade cabinet to your TV to a console to 3D. Remember 3D Pac-Man? So now he's a ball with a face and arms and legs. He's not just that little circle with a mouth. He's an actual character. And it's like, ugh. I'm hit or miss on the Pac-Man World games because when I play Pac-Man, I'm just so used to the 2D flat screen old school Pac-Man. I'm not used to the 3D platformer that it is. like on a PlayStation or the Nintendo, but like I can definitely get around the fact that it's still Pac-Man. I'm sure the games are fun because they make so many Pac-Man games. I have Pac-Man Ghostly Adventures 1 and 2 on the Wii U. I have Pac-Man on the PS4. Eventually I'll get it on the PS5 and this Xbox, but it's still here. It's still around. We can't go on and not talk about these two games. Although I kind of wish to give Miss Pac-Man a little bit more love because that is the better game. Maybe make 3D Miss Pac-Man if they haven't already. Give Miss Pac-Man her own compilation on the PlayStation or the Nintendo Switch or the Xbox, like it's Steam, maybe. Or maybe it is on Steam. I haven't looked on Steam, but I couldn't find anything on the other three. And if there is, you gotta let me know. I'll cop that and put it in my collection. But I just want to kind of start off because starting from now on, I'm gonna talk about more arcade games. So I kind of split this up into, I guess, sections or eras, if you will. Like if you remember my first several episodes, I started with Flash games and browser games like Happy Wheels and mobile games as well. So I like Happy Wheels, Angry Birds, Temple Run. A lot of those pick up and play style games, which this is too. But these are arcade games. I'm gonna go into arcades because that was kind of a lot of us arcades. Just like Flash gaming, it was all of ours gateway into gaming. Uh, where our classic arcade gamings and Flash gamings were kind of neck and neck with me. That was kind of like my gateway into gaming, along with the Super Nintendo. But we'll save that for a much better time. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the plugs before I let you guys go for the week. First and foremost, just follow the podcast, man. Yeah, I'm just a weirdo with the mic. I'm no professional here. I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not Markiplier. I'm not, what I'm saying, dude in the mic talking about his favorite games from the past. I am seeing my downloads going up. Surpassed 100 downloads. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I'm seeing my followers go up. Be sure to follow my socials, Instagram and Facebook at Kevin Gill Gaming. And be sure to follow my YouTube, also Kevin Gill Gaming. All my sources have the same profile picture, so you know it's the right place. And speaking of, growing, my YouTube is growing. I love it. Subscribers are going up. I'm getting closer to 100 subscribers. Getting a lot of views, likes, comments, people sharing my stuff. I see it. I like it. I love seeing those numbers going up, man. It's cool that I'm just sitting here just chilling with this little hobby I picked up, and y'all are chilling too. That's awesome. That's cool. So just keep it up, man. I love it. Share it with your friends. Span out. Help me reach that broader audience. I know I'm kind of in a tough competition here because the gaming community is so saturated with other gaming commentators and YouTubers and podcasters, but I'm trying to stick my feet in there, slowly finding my audience, so I love it. Love the fact that you guys are getting a kick out of this too, man. And stay tuned for next Sunday. Next Sunday is going to be another classic arcade game. May not be as long as this episode was, but I have to talk about it, man. What is it? I guess you'll find out next week. All right, y'all. I'm out.